Yes, I guess we might be a minute or two late. I guess, maybe. That's okay. Okay. We are doing our thing regardless. It is a wonderful day, and I'd like to welcome all of you back into the space. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to your real life, the Inner Storyteller 101. Welcome to class. Welcome to this podcast. Now, we are going to explore the very philosophy that this podcast was created to spread, was created to promulgate. Is that the word? Prom- Let me see. Let me see. Let me test my vocab. Promulgate, define. Promulgate means to officially announce a new law or public rule to make a wide idea or belief known to everyone. My vocabulary is on point. So, uh, that is, and I'm so impressed by like the simplest big words. I'm not really impressed. Anyway, welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. What's happening? Great to see you all. And if you are here, you are in for real conversations. We talk about natural law, religion, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the great. We talk about money, talk about anarchy, and how mankind is manipulated from the shadows by forces that do not have our best interests at heart, not even some good interests at heart for us, perhaps because they are completely evil. But we are not coming at religion, bashing faith systems, or anything like that here. We are simply examining psychological effects, causes, affects, if you will, of the stories that we have the most faith in, the ones we have the most stake in, and how those stories help shape society and culture and all of the things that we like and that we say that matter. But that examination has to sit right alongside an honest look at the current human condition, which is slavery. Government is slavery, good people. And the question that we have to keep coming back to is, of course, what can actually be improved with a proper understanding of the inner storyteller and how it works. And if any of that makes you a little uneasy, makes you a little angry, or you know makes you feel unwelcome in any way, please understand how welcomed you are. You are welcome to stay, maybe confront some of those feelings, and simultaneously, of course, you are welcome to leave at any time. No pressure to stay. The only caveat is you can't leave until you like the video. You gotta like the video on your way out. It's like a when your teacher used to line you up and say, answer number 3 on the piece of paper, and then you can get in line to leave the classroom. It's kind of like that. You got to like the video so that the exit button or the next video actually works. If you click the other video before liking the video, it's somehow it's not going to let you leave. So, or at least that's what I heard. Y'all let me know in the comments. But don't experiment until, of course, after the after the show. What up, Sarah? What up, Sarah Cross? Sarah Cross will be in the building tomorrow. I know I promised y'all that she would be in the building today. That is okie doke. She is doing her thing over there in Sarah Cross land. And we are here to talk the Inner Storyteller 101. The Inner Storyteller um, explained basically on your top right, we have the 3 seats of consciousness that we are going to discuss. Top left is a picture of the book. I've written a book called The Inner Storyteller that explains all of this that I'm getting ready to get into today. Right next to the book, it says control through stories, not chains. Now, that does not mean that chains don't exist and people are not controlled by chains. Of course, The first and last resort is always chains. They will always try that first and see if you just acquiesce to chains. And then if you don't, then the last resort becomes chains. And the first resort is mind control. But control through stories, not chains. We are going to get deeply into that. On the right side of that handsome fella, we get how it works, the sorting function. Information arrives, and then instantly matches a file, a sort of category, and it's filed into a drawer in your mind, and the reaction is born before you even know what happened or that it happened. And then under all of that, you got the present moment is the only place where the story can change. What story are you going to live? We are going to get into what the inner storyteller is, how it works, how the system gets built, the collective inner storyteller, and why the present moment is indeed the house of change. And I can't wait. I'm very excited. So, without further ado, let's get into this here script. Today's episode is a bit different from other episodes on this channel. We spend a lot of time on this show examining specific things like history, money, government, religion, morality, consciousness, and so on. And at least in regard to that last thing on the list, consciousness, it's no different in that regard because we are going to take a deep dive into my personal philosophy about consciousness. And the inner storyteller framework is always the lens that we are going to examine those things through. But it's all good. But I've never dedicated a full episode to explaining the lens itself. What it is, how it works, where I got the um where this came from, right? And why I think it matters more than almost anything else I could share with you. So, today's episode is the Inner Storyteller 101. Please get out your notebooks. Please turn to a blank page. Put your name at the top right, not the top left, but the top right. Write it in cursive. Put the date right under that bad boy. I'm just kidding. Um, Before I get into any of what I have to say, I want to make something clear so that there's no confusion about what this is and what this isn't. It's very important. This is not religious doctrine, good people. This is not a new spiritual movement or an attempt at a new spiritual movement. This is not only my personal belief system and me asking for you to adopt my personal belief system. What I am describing when I talk about the inner storyteller is how consciousness appears to me to be designed, layered, based on observable reality, science, what I can see in my own experience and in the world around me, on what science has been able to, the big science, if you will, has been able to demonstrate about how the brain processes meaning, um, and what philosophy and spiritual traditions across cultures and centuries have been pointing at in their various languages for a very long time. The framework is unique only in the diction in which I provide my answers to certain big questions. The reality that this framework is trying to describe is not new information. And when it comes to truth, there really is nothing new under the sun. I love that Mark Passio says that at the beginning of all of his biggest presentations because it's not just humility. That is something that we have seemed to forgot. It seems like we forgot um, that there's nothing really new under the sun, at least when it comes to truth. Now, obviously, we have a great capacity to create new things as human beings, but for truth and waking up to something, there's nothing new under the sun. I am not offering you something new to adopt and believe and paint as the way you should see the world. Okay? And this is not just conjecture. Now, I cannot avoid being a being of bias and um, just the limitations of a single human being who is trying to answer big life questions. I have biases and things that will skew. I'm not perfect, I guess is all I'm trying to say. So there's that as well. Nothing new, and I'm not perfect. Let's get into it. Part one. I want to talk about the three seats of consciousness. Now, this is just a sort of how, in my opinion, consciousness is layered. This is not the whole picture of how consciousness is like the definition of consciousness or something like that. It would be incredibly difficult for me to try to actually define consciousness as a whole. So just keep that in mind. Let's get into the three seats of consciousness. Meaning does not reside in data. Data points do not give meaning. It does not arise, from isolated facts. Across cultures and centuries, human beings have agreed on one thing. It is better to live a meaningful life than merely a long one. To have meaningful relationships rather than just safe ones. And to endure a meaningful struggle rather than a comfortable void. Meaning comes from the inner storyteller within. That's quotes from my book. And I will show you at the end of this episode. Y'all probably heard my daughter just now. Everything is okay. Everything is cool. She's just 2.5, and that's what 2.5-year-olds do. If y'all heard that, she's starting to go a little ballistic outside the door. Anyway, uh, I tell you, I learned a lot about myself and the stories that I was holding within my in my journey, being a father and being a good father. By the way, um, they say, so they tell me. That's my Trump impression. So they tell me I'm so great at being a dad. Um, Boom. Meaning comes from the inner storyteller within. To understand the inner storyteller, you first have to understand where it sits in the hierarchy of consciousness. And for that, I use the image of three seats. The first seat is awareness. I'm going to pull up the image again. Uh, this is probably the most clear. The first seat is awareness. Awareness simply is. This is not individual awareness. This is not the waking state. This is pure, without property awareness. The field, if you will. Sometimes the scientific community may call it the field. Okay, awareness, pure awareness, not individualized, also not outside of the individual only. It's just pure awareness. Anything. Okay, so nothing exists without awareness. The first seat of consciousness from what I've found, researched, and can see in my own experience. Awareness is the open field of consciousness before any recognition, before any thought, before any story. It is the space in which existence itself takes place. You can think of it as the deepest and also um, ubiquitously permeating every other layer. The deepest, most shallow, and every other layer in between. Not the loudest, not the most active, but the most fundamental, most essential to all things. Awareness doesn't do, it simply is. It is the ground everything else stands on. All movement stands on awareness. The second seat is the I am. The I am. That's what it's a good name for it, but it's obviously not the words I am. Okay? The I am is the what I call the seed of consciousness. What Eastern religion sometimes calls the seed of consciousness. The first recognition of being itself, where awareness becomes aware, it is aware. It is the part of you that knows you exist, not what exists, not what it's experiencing in story form, not what anything means, simply I am, right? That there's a presence in you that is a layer deeper and more, again, permeating than your, again, your sense of me. Okay, your sense of me is layers and layers up, if you will, layers and layers closer to surface level than the I am presence, which is layers and layers deep. Okay. That knowing is what I refer to as the I am. And that knowing, again, this is not religious doctrine. This is an explanation of how I have come to believe that consciousness it works. Just how, like, if through a Christian perspective, you would say how God structured consciousness. Through a Muslim perspective, how Allah chose to structure the consciousness. Through a Buddhist perspective, maybe how the Tao made consciousness. The Tao of consciousness or something, right? It just I'm not taking anything away from anybody's faith system. I'm trying to describe how you know you are, and you do know that you are, how you're conscious and how that consciousness is structured only. All right? So, in spiritual traditions across cultures, this I am presence has been pointed at by many names. Uh, India, they call it the Atman. Christians may call it Christ consciousness, or the Christ within, or spiritual people who love Jesus Christ may call it Christ consciousness. If maybe they're not Christian, but you know, um, some call it the spark, right? Whatever name the tradition or philosophy may use, they are mostly pointing at the deepest and most permanent, only permanent recognition of I am, of the fact I am. So that's the second C. Very important that we understand these things: awareness, pure awareness, and then the I am awareness, aware that I am aware. The third seat is where all of the dynamics of consciousness um, get their origin, get their origin story, but also originate, meaning arise from. Okay, all of the dynamic aspects of consciousness, all of the dynamic properties, qualities, happenings of consciousness are arising from the third seat of consciousness, which is the one that most concerns us on this channel, the inner storyteller. The inner storyteller is the most powerful force below awareness. The I am has no need for power. Pure awareness is everything. The inner storyteller is where power originates. I'll get into that. The inner storyteller explains what it means that I am. The inner storyteller explains what it means that the the other is, right? The entire world, as well as every body and every animal in it and every inanimate object. It interprets existence. It gives shape to one's experience as well as collective experience. The inner storyteller decides whether pain from any given scenario is a lesson or a punishment or both or neither. Whether fear is danger or invitation. Whether obedience is virtue or surrender. Long before a person forms a religion, worldview, political identity, the inner storyteller is already writing. The inner storyteller is not the ego, but it tells the story of the ego and its evolution and is much more powerful than the ego, much more permanent than the ego, which is ever changing. The inner storyteller is not the emotions. It gives emotions their meaning and is writing before the emotions are felt. Obviously, the inner storyteller is not the body, pardon me. It's not like your nerves or something because it narrates the body's sensations and responses in story form. The inner storyteller is the bridge. It's the bridge between raw awareness and lived identity. Um, y'all give me a quick second here. I'm going to kindly ask that something be done about this. One sec. All right. Okay. Sorry if that took a little second. I know, silence on a podcast is like a cardinal sin, but let's get back to it. It's the bridge between awareness and lived identity. It speaks in images, memory, myth, anticipation. It works while we are awake, while we are asleep. The inner storyteller shapes the brain's wiring while the conscious mind is distracted. It decides which experiences become scars, which become wisdom. So, the three seats in this in the context of this work have awareness, pure consciousness, if you will. You have the I am, presence, and the inner storyteller, which gives meaning to what I am is aware of. Whether that is in the form of a human, an animal, uh, some sort of spiritual being, or otherwise. Okay? Awareness, I am, the inner storyteller. Each one contained within the previous. Each one more active, more specific, more involved in the daily business of being alive than the one above it. And the inner storyteller is where the real work happens, both the work of liberation and, of course, also the work of control. What's up, y'all? Hey, as I'm explaining the inner storyteller, if any questions come to your mind, drop them in the comments because we get ready to get into part two, which is how it works. We're going to talk about the inner storyteller's sorting function. Okay, very, very. This is very, very important to understand in a way that you realize where change resides, where the opportunity to upgrade yourself resides. Okay, the sorting function. So, the inner storyteller does its work primarily through what I call the sorting function. The sorting function is the most important mechanism in the framework to understand because it is the most it's the one that never we never can feel it operating in real time. It's too fast. But what it does, we can see the fruits of, and we can understand it through discovery, through observation. Just like, we can't see the wind, but we can see the effects of it and study and learn a whole lot about the wind, what it does, why it does it, through observing the effects of it. So the sorting function is the same way, and we can't see it happening. It's way too fast, what I'm about to explain, but we can see the effects of it, and what I'm going to say is going to make sense, even to you, even to me, even to a baby. Just kidding. Now, the sorting function is very important because we can't see it operating, not because it's hidden in some inaccessible part of the mind, but because it operates faster than the mind's ability to actually track it. And here's the best way that I know how to describe it. You cannot see you cannot see air, you cannot point to air and say there it is and have someone that doesn't understand the concept understand, right? But you do know air exists, and you know it by what it does, by what it moves when it moves, by fire that burns, by breath that sustains life, by the feeling of wind on your skin. You know air exists by looking at its effects. The sorting function is just like that. I did not know. I I prepare things, and then months later, I'm like, okay, I think it's a good day to do this, and then boom, forgot, got ahead of myself there. Now, here's what it does. When information arrives, any information, a word, an image, a sound, a situation, a person walking into a room, the sorting function instantly matches that incoming information against everything the inner storyteller already holds. Every story, every association, every meaning that has been installed through experience and repetition, culture, your formative years when the system was being built. And it files the incoming information into a category before conscious thought arrives about the feeling or about the story. By the time you are aware of a reaction, be it outrage, comfort, fear, love, suspicion, trust, the sorting function already identified the category of what the story that you're observing means. The filing already happened. And we're going to get specific. We're going to get more practical, but this is the bare bones. What you experience as your reaction is the output of a process that completed before you knew it started. And this is not a flaw of human consciousness. This is the system doing what it was built to do and actually makes it so that we can live our daily life. This if we could keep up with everything that our like subconscious you know space had in it, it would be quite impractical to try and use the 8 hours to 16 hours a day that we're up and at 'em. I said 8 hours. I was thinking of hours of sleep. 16 hours or so that we're like up and at 'em. Uh, you know, it is a good thing that this happens. It's not a flaw in the system. It's the system doing what it's built to do. The sorting function produces instantaneous, automatic meaning from incoming experience without requiring conscious processing to happen. In a world where a slow response to genuine danger could cost you your life, that speed is, of course, a gift. Okay? It is because of the sorting function that if you see something flying fast towards your face and you're unable to identify what it is, how hard it is or soft it is, who caused it to to come towards your face, you moving back or ducking or blocking or doing some sort of motion, that that is due to the story that you already have stored about fast incoming things coming towards your body or your face, especially your face. Okay? There's a story that has a category, and your raw experience of your peripheral catching the the sight of something flying fast towards your face, that experience already is associated with a story, whether you got hit in the face or you've seen a lot of movies or a bunch of fail videos on Instagram or whatever where somebody's get hit in the face with something. You have a story running in your subconscious. It's always available. That goes danger, danger. This could happen to you. And it happens far too fast for conscious thought to notice that that's happening. And so you move. And then conscious thought arrives. You saw the thing, the story. You saw the thing, you moved, you got lucky, or whatever you tell yourself. That's kind of how that works. Okay, I'm trying to demonstrate the speed of the sorting function that so that you get like this is way faster than this is even faster than light. Okay, this is at the speed of thought, which is exponentially faster than light. Speed of thought is instant, right? It's kind of like um arguing over speed of light characters versus teleportation characters in comics. Teleportation wins every time because instant. You don't have to move through space to get there. So, um, the the human problem that arises is that the sorting function cannot distinguish between a story that was installed deliberately to serve someone else's interest and a story that arose from genuine experience and genuine reflection. It just runs whatever is in the system. It files it files what arrives against what it already holds. And what it already holds was built during the years when you couldn't yet examine what was really being put in your head. Okay, we call that your formative years. And that leads us directly into part 3 of Inner Storyteller 101, which is how the system gets built and how it gets used. Okay? The inner storyteller is programmable. Human consciousness in general, is programmable. Everything runs on programs, right? Cells, the reproductive systems of all things, um, molecules, everything is programmable. Not in the metaphor sense, by the way, in the precise functional sense of the word. Human beings are not born with 100% fixed natures. We arrive with capacities, plasticity, the ability to be shaped by the environment that we land in. The formative years are the primary programming window, the period when the sorting function is being built from the incoming material of experience, before the person has the conceptual tools to evaluate what's being installed. What is going to influence my automatic responses to any similar stimuli from here on out? Think of it like the formatting of a hard drive. Before any data is stored, the system has to be formatted, right? The formatting determines how data is organized, how it's retrieved, and of course, how it's processed from that point forward, whether it's going to input something on the screen or do some other type of function. The formative years of a human being are the formatting of the that human's inner storyteller's bare bones filing system. Okay, the stories installed during that period of a life don't just sit passively waiting to be recalled when it's convenient, like some future memories will. They become the structure of the personality through which all future experience is processed. And this is why the most powerful stories are not always the ones we consciously defend. They are the ones that we rehearse, the ones we rehearse inwardly until they begin organizing what feels true, what feels safe, maybe what feels holy, what feels possible, or what feels threatening. And all of that without us realizing that that our inner storyteller is doing that, right? That our mind works this way. And this is precisely, in my opinion, why the inner storyteller is the most powerful target for anyone who wants to control human behavior without force, especially large swaths of human behavior. Because you don't control behavior directly through the inner storyteller in a way that's like repetition, how to say, root memorization of something. You don't even control behavior directly through the inner storyteller. You control the meaning of the story of the events that happen to people. You control what meaning they give to it, and they program themselves. You teach the inner storyteller what things mean, what authority means, what money means, what a nation means, what God means, what freedom means, and so on. And the sorting function of that person does the rest automatically, without chains necessarily, without constant physical enforcement necessarily. Because the person carrying the installed story will sort every incoming experience through it, through that lens, right? And defend the story more fiercely than any external threat ever really could. Control would no longer need chains, it only needs repetition, it only needs management of meaning. This is why the inner storyteller is so important to understand. And now we're going to get into part 4, which is the collective inner storyteller. Because just like we have a sort of collective conscience in a given society, and a sort of collective conscience, you could say, of the human family, we also have collective ways that cultures will um, kind of collectively believe about things that happen to the culture at large, okay, or around the culture at large, things that happen because the society is moving a certain way. We will have a collective belief system, collective set of stories that, again, influence and direct our automatic responses to stimuli in life. So here's where the framework moves from the individual to civilization. Every human being has their own inner storyteller, their own sorting function, their own accumulated filing system built from their specific life experiences. But we do not live in isolation from other human beings. We live in relationship. We have families, we have friends, we have communities, cultures, institutions, languages, and so called nations. And the stories running in one's inner storyteller interact with and are shaped by the stories running in the inner storytellers of everyone around them. And when enough people share the same stories about the world, the same associations, the same meanings, filed in the same drawers, you get what I call the collective inner storyteller of a given society or the human family. The aggregate of all those individual filing systems running similar stories simultaneously. The collective inner storyteller is upstream of everything that we typically look at when we analyze a society. It's upstream of institutions, markets, governments, of cultural trends. It's more important and should be primary to all of these things. Those things are downstream products of the stories that enough people are running at the same time in a given region or in the world at large. The institution doesn't create the collective story. The collective story creates the institution and then maintains it by defending it and making it feel like a natural feature of reality rather than just a constructed agreement serving a specific interest. And this is why examining history through the lens of the inner storyteller always reveals something that conventional historical analysis always misses, which is when a historian says, you know, in the early 1900s and in late 1800s, Europe was full of tensions before World War One. When they say that, they're describing a collective inner storyteller condition, right? A set of stories running in the individuals that were running the governing and financial class of the continent that sorted certain nations as threats and certain expansions of your own nation as necessary, right? We're talking to you, Germany. Certain sacrifices as honorable, but the random farmer in France was not running those stories about the random accountant in Italy, right? He was farming. But but the collective inner storyteller of his governing class produced the conditions that conscripted his body into a war that his own stories never really generated. And understanding the collective inner storyteller is essential for the pursuit of genuine self-knowledge because it reveals that not only it reveals that not all of the stories running in your individual inner storyteller are your own. Many of them arrived through this collective field, through culture, media, the language of history, the language of nationalism, whatever it is. Before you really had the opportunity to examine the stories you were being given, see if they're true or not, you were already choosing them. You're influenced to defend stories that are held collectively because the collective field surrounds the individual the way that the ocean surrounds a singular bubble or wave, right? The wave is of the ocean. Its movement is shaped by the ocean's currents, right? Pressures, temperature. And yet, the wave is also its own particular expression of that larger body of water. The individual inner storyteller is of the collective inner storyteller, shaped by it. But it's also, at every present moment, capable of introducing a different pattern into the field via individuals. And that's the most important thing to understand about the relationship between the individual and the collective. It flows in both directions, right? The individual in the present moment can introduce something new. The collective already has running what are the what the programming is for our automatic responses to the stimuli of life. Let me read this comment. Right. The distinction between the collective and individual inner storyteller, storyteller, in terms of impact on the lives we live and what we see in the world. I'm guessing like is what we should be learning about. And yes, that's why we are in class today. That's why we're here. Um, you know, the collective shapes the individual, and the individual through consistent right choice making, if you will, right action taking, and genuine examined living and reflection, and upgrading your behavior, one's behavior, influences the collective, sometimes greatly through one person, sometimes greatly through 10 or 11 people, right? And not always instantly, not always dramatically, but truly, the same way that a wave changes the surface of the ocean when it plays its part. And that's relevant to part 5 of this course, which is which is the present moment as the house of change. Okay? Change, the opportunity for change, is not what people think it is. And the inner storyteller framework, I'm trying to put it out there in a way that gives rise to this knowledge that I'm about to get into. Here's where everything lands. Okay, the present moment as the house of change. Excuse me, house of change. Most people approach the inner storyteller work as though the goal is to understand the past, to trace back the stories that were installed, to identify the ones that are causing harm, and to somehow undo what was done. And there is value in that kind of moral archaeology, of course. Reflection is very valuable, very useful. Looking at the fruit of your choices and tracing backward to the stories that produced them is legitimate and very important work. But the present moment is where all of that actually lives, not in the past. The past exists now, but only as memory, as meaning maker, and as the stories that your inner storyteller is currently holding and running and using to process this moment. It does not exist somewhere else, waiting to be reached into, right? It exists right here, right now, in the present state of consciousness, which interprets it as past. Which means the sorting function isn't running old programs from a distant past. It's running the now program, the program that it currently has, its most updated programming in this moment, in every moment. And so the opportunity to change the story that you're living also must exist right here, right now, and at all times. When you catch the sorting function in its output, when you notice the reaction and ask yourself honestly, what story produced that reaction in me, rather than simply going with it, you are exercising the one capacity that no installation of a story can permanently remove. You are exercising your free will, the capacity to simply observe, the capacity to ask whether the story running right now was chosen or inherited, the capacity to count to 10, god damn it, the capacity to choose differently in this moment than the default program would have you choose. That change happens in right in the now, pardon me. that change happens in the now. Not slowly across years of effortful self improvement, but the moment of genuine recognition when you choose to make the change. In the now moment that choice is made, the moment the story is seen clearly enough that you can choose not to run the story anymore, that is the moment, and it is complete in itself, that the change occurred. So change is not some hard thing that exists in at the end of years of great effort. Change is available right now, at all times, to all people. Now, what follows change is, of course, practice, commitment, and you living the story of being a changed man or a changed woman or a changed religionist, whatever. Right? Born again, if you will. Repetition of making the right choice, making the new choice until the new pattern emerges of you making that choice. And of course, until that pattern has the same automaticity, automaticity as the old one. But the first now in which you choose differently is already the change. And this is why the inner storyteller work is the prerequisite work for any other work that you may do to change. You cannot really withdraw your energy from a story that you haven't yet reflected on and examined. You cannot redirect what you don't know to be redirected. You don't know what you don't know, right? You cannot contribute something genuinely different to the collective inner storyteller while running the same programs that the collective installed in you. The stories that cultivate a culture of chaos and indifference, the stories that make exploitation feel natural and authority feel inevitable, the ones that make distance feel like moral permission to not care, or make the farmer's life in the middle of random farmer in the middle of France's life feel less connected to your own than the farmer living under the flag, you know, that you pledge allegiance to. Those stories only persist because enough present moment consciousnesses are still running them right now. Change the present story, change the consciousness. Change the consciousness, change the field. So change what is installed in the collective inner storyteller by changing what's installed in the individual inner storytellers of a given culture, a given society. And that will change what story, that will change the degree of awareness or consciousness of that society. And that change will change what's in the field of pure awareness beyond the game of individual or all. You know, a pure awareness is not one, it's not all, it's not nothing. It just is. Okay. So, change the field as the daily practiced, examined living of a human being who has looked at what was installed and decided to participate in their own authorship instead of going with the collective inner storyteller flow. That is what the inner storyteller work really is at its core. Not a philosophy to be admired from a distance, but a practice to be lived from the inside out. The inner storyteller is a battleground, good people, but it's also the field of liberation where we can all come play. The question that I have for you is, what story are you willing to live? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments. I really liked putting this kind of course thing together. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll bring the picture up one more time, so you can see, kind of what's going on here. Sorry, I'm just looking at all of the different uh, options for the size of this thing. But yeah, the inner storyteller, good people. Um, Let me know in the comments what story you are willing to live, what you thought about the information, and please consider sharing this video to anybody that is interested in knowledge of self, right? Please consider sharing this video to people interested in understanding the inner storyteller and how it works, right? Gaining a proper understanding of the inner storyteller and how it works. Because with, in my opinion, this is the missing piece to knowledge of self. This is the missing aspect of information in knowledge of self circles and content. That's my opinion. So if we can get this out to the good people of the world, maybe we can make an impact of some kind. Who knows? It's not up for me to decide. It's up to me to go ahead and end the stream and to say thank you very much for coming. Please like the video, subscribe to the channels. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you all tomorrow in the next episode.